much of what I've spoken about has been much more of what we are. It's about the analytics side. And I thought I was going to take a different approach. One of the punchlines I've often had in my presentations is you've got to have a narrative. I've said, finance is really good at narratives. They don't just show data, they put a story together. And I was thinking about what's my story right now, and well, how does an electrical engineer, computer software developer with a penchant for analytics end up getting the opportunity to run a business? Seemed like an interesting question, and I was thinking, well, maybe that's a little indulgent. But then I thought, right after I was promoted a few months ago to take over the US business, a great former Omniture guy analyst in Seattle sent me this LinkedIn message. And turns out he had even more vision than I did at the time. And he said, you know what, Joe, about 3 years ago, I said it was only a matter of time before top executives began emerging from us. I thought, wow, maybe there is a story here. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to tell some stories today. I'm going to build a narrative on how did this happen, and I peppered through 10 little lessons I've learned along the way, and hopefully it'll be a little interesting. So let's take us way, way back. Early 90s, I was working at EDS, which was owned by General Motors at the time, and the web was just starting to blossom, and I was spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to get General Motors to care about the web, and we were building some early network systems, and I loved the web back then. So this was Yahoo shortly after it launched in '94. If you look at the bottom, there's 23,000 pages on the internet. It turns out it had a limit at one point. And I used to come in every day at work, a buddy of mine, and he actually went on to co-found Salesforce.com. We'd come out every day just eager to click the what's new button in the upper corner because we want to know, are there any new websites out there? Because we'd kind of binned all of them. So things have changed a little, and just for fun, I went to Yahoo today and searched for Yahoo. And instead of 23,000 sites on the entire internet, I got 846 million results just for Yahoo. So things have come a long way, and data and complexity along that. But let's take us back to '99. So I was doing some development, I left, I sold out to the dark side, got an MBA, I joined Ernst & Young for a little while and was doing some of the early eCommerce implementations. And in '99, something interesting happened. Through my SAP contacts, I got to know a group of people who are launching this new company called Black Box Incorporated. Good, sexy, geeky name, and Black Box, like a flight recorder. And you haven't heard of this company, or you probably haven't, but what it ultimately then became is another company you haven't heard of, Deja Cube, which then became a company called Tea Leaf Technology, and today it's just known as Tea Leaf. And it's an interesting company. And think back to 1999. So things had evolved a bit. Yahoo ruled the roost on search back then. They were no longer putting how many websites there are on the internet. Things had grown a bit. Google existed. It was in beta. Hadn't really gotten the foothold it had gotten. And even my Expedia was a few years old, Microsoft Expedia back then, as they were starting to kick off this brand new world of online travel. Very interesting. So I'm at Tea Leaf, and I actually personally wrote the first white paper back in March of 2000, and I pulled it up last night and looked at sort of how I open things, and apparently what I wrote was to accurately analyze and understand online behavior. Two major components are required: the complete user experience and key semantic events as defined by the application. So I know Tea Leaf pretty well, and it kind of pains me to read that because I wrote it and I have no idea what the hell that means. But that's okay, because I don't really want to talk about Tea Leaf white papers. What I want to talk about is the Little Russian webmaster. Because it turned out when Tea Leaf started, it was really just a debugging hack that had been built inside of SAP to help solve some of the early e-commerce problems. And an interesting thing happened. The founder of the company ran SAP Labs. He decided to install Tea Leaf on SAP.com, on their site. And there was this crazy, brilliant 24-year-old Russian webmaster developer who was running SAP.com, and he gave the tool to this guy, Igor. And Igor started using it, and Igor started predicting the future. If you think about tea leaf, reading the tea leaves, predicting, get it? You know, that's kind of where it came from. And what does that mean? He started calling up the top sales reps and saying, hey, I didn't know you landed Ford. They're like, we haven't closed Ford. No, you've closed Ford. They're like, no, we haven't signed the contract. He goes, well, you're going to. what happened is he started really looking at consumer behaviors. He said, hey, why are all these people from Ford suddenly downloading implementation white papers and signing up for paid training classes? Because they were doing it right before they signed the deal. And it was a pattern he saw happening over and over again. It's very interesting. And we looked at that and we thought, wow, there's something here. But first important lesson, it's not about the tools, it's not about the technology. It's about the people using the tools. What are they doing with it? And that's when the magic started to happen. So I was hearing about all this. I was getting very interested. It was late '99, and the person I knew at SAP went on to become the co-founder and VP of Business Development, and she wanted me to come in to meet the CEO. And I said, well, I need to do some more due diligence. I want to see more about the product. So she brought me into their makeshift office at the time. And this story I call How to Blow an Interview and Accidentally Get the Job. So I said, let me see the product. And she put me aside, and I went into this little engineering closet, and there were servers everywhere. It was like right out of Weird Science. And there was just the geekiest engineer I'd ever met. He's all excited, and he's showing me the product, and we're digging through it. And I was like, wow, I mean, it was raw, but it was amazing. I hadn't seen anything like it back then, and I could use it. I got it. But I mean, it had problems, it had issues. His view of how it would be received in the marketplace was just wrong, and I'm challenging him, and I'm telling him, nah, you're full of it, and you got to do this, you got to do that. And we got into a really good debate, about an hour, really constructive. And I walked out, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And I went to Randy, and I said, I'm ready to go meet the CEO. She goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm ready to go meet the CEO. She goes, you just did. I went, oh, crap. Because I was younger back then, and I kind of thought CEOs were people you dance delicately around, and I would never have challenged to his face the founder of a company and say, you're full of it, this will never work, or you're wrong. But I did. And he walked out and said, hire this guy. Which comes to lesson 2. And I believe this. You've got to be honest. If you know things to be true, if the data is telling you, if your experience tells you, you've got to be honest. You've got to say what you mean, and you've always got to be transparent about that. It's the only way you actually get anywhere. So I joined Tea Leaf. Was there for about 7 years, and got really good through the years of swooping into companies, installing the product, and extracting value quickly. It's kind of how we did our business in the early days, especially with a product no one had heard of and no one knew what to do with. And I don't know, about 4 years in, I started working with a prospective customer. They were an HR sort of hosted solution, and one of the things they did is a system that allowed you to do annual performance reviews and things like that. And it was interesting. I was looking through, I'm banging away trying to find errors or things that are wrong, and I pull up a session, and I'm looking at it, and someone had written a performance review about one of their employees. And I'm kind of glancing at it, and a word caught my eye. I'm like, what? And I'm reading the review. It's like, this person is a total bitch, and I don't know how she continues to work here. And this was written by her manager as a performance review, in writing, on the record, in a system, and it was a big company. And I kind of was mortified. I'm like, I'm not even sure I'm supposed to be seeing this data, and what do I do about this? I'm like, okay, so the founder was nearby of this company I was doing work with, and I brought him over, and I said, you got to see this. And he lit up. I mean, grinning ear to ear. He's like, this is great. I'm like, what? He goes, this is what we've been trying to do. This is what I've been looking for. And his whole point of view was, without these managed systems, without controls, this is the kind of stuff that happens out there that they could help with. This was gold for him. And he looked at me, and he smiled, and he said, can you find more of these? I thought, sure, Tea Leaf, you could search anything. It was pre-text search. And so I got to the keyboard and started searching for every swear word I could think of. And they were showing up. And sometimes, it wasn't as bad as you'd seem, This project was a total bitch, but they slapped it into place. Good job. It's like maybe not the best corporate language, but it was in there, and a lot of times it wasn't so good. He said, I want you to analyze this. pull it together. So I had one of my weirdest moments in my career where I was then put in front of their entire executive team and got to present something like this. Here is the distribution of inappropriate word usage by type. Presented it with actual words, and they loved it. They bought the solution. But what's the lesson here? Know your customer. There's a really common mistake we all make, which is, I'm my customer. I know what people want because that's what I want. And there are times that's appropriate, but you are not your customer. Get to know them, get to know what drives them, and you'll get to the answer. I would have never have known that the executive team cared so much about swear words. So, 2006, a buddy of mine from business school lured me down to Dallas, Texas. Somehow my wife and family agreed to come with me to go head up online marketing at hotels.com, our ancient logo back then. And I got there, and classic new hire story, and things are in shambles. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And one of the first things, literally, I think my first week, we were talking about how do we get this business up. And one of the things that was really bugging us was, why does our checkout conversion suck so much? And we were looking at it, and people who actually got to the last step of the checkout but didn't actually convert, it was like a 30% fallout. And it's just obvious. Come on, why are people going all the way through the process and then not buying? It didn't make sense. And the data was there, but we just couldn't explain it. So I stayed up, literally pulled an all-nighter, and this was old school. I grabbed like hundreds of tea leaf sessions and other data sources, and I just started mining through it by hand. There was no fancy charts, no fancy business intelligence. I had a notebook and a pen, and I just started writing down everything I saw, person by person. And a story started to emerge. And it was interesting. I realized, it's not that they're abandoning, it's that they're trying to transact and they can't. Well, why didn't we know that? And it was because it was a huge insight for me at the time, and I realized the metric was wrong. We were looking at fallout, how many people were getting to that last checkout page and how many resulted in a transaction. It's a basic definition of conversion, pretty simple. Numerator, transactions, denominator, number of people who were on the page. But of course, what actually happens is people are on the checkout page, they click the please take my money button, it's processed, and then they get the confirmation page. Of course, what actually happens is they click the checkout button, they process the page, and then they might get the confirmation page, or they might get cycled back to the checkout page. Oh, you forgot to put in a field, you put in an invalid zip code, your credit card wasn't right, or they might get an outright error page. Boom. I thought, wow, there's something here. And it turned out most of the people falling out were actually clicking the take my money. So I went into my boss, I knew him well, he's general manager of hotels.com, and I said, Sean, do you know we have an outage going on? He goes, what? And he's going to his email, and there's no alerts, and the NOC hadn't reported anything. And it was like 1 in 5 customers, even a little worse than that. I said, all these people are coming to our site, like 1 in 5, like more than 20% are going through the process, finding a great hotel, going through the entire checkout, putting in all their guest information and their billing information, their credit card, they're taking their wallet, their cash out of their hand. They're saying, please, hotels.com, take it from us. And we said, no, we don't want your money. I go, that's an outage. I don't care how you cut it. We might as well just turn the site off for 5 hours every day. What's the difference? He said, you're right. This is an outage. And he did an interesting thing. He pulled everyone together. We had engineering there, we had QA there, we had design there, we had product there, we had the retailing teams there, we had finance there, we had everybody. We all got in a room, the war room. And we said, yeah, this isn't a traditional outage, but it's an outage. All your projects are hereby, you got to get out of jail card, things can slip, but we don't stop till we figure this out. And we did. It took about a week, and we cleaned up almost all of it. It's amazing. People are like, wow, it's like we're a startup again. And you get 2 lessons for the price of 1 on this one. So first, it's not about the click conversion. It's not about those classic metrics. It's about attempt. It's about intent. What are they trying to do, and are they successful? Because classic measurements don't necessarily show that. It was a huge insight for me. And the other thing I realized is you got to translate data into actionable terms. Putting this in terms of, it's an outage. You might as well just have the site off 5-6 hours a day. Really resonated with the company. And you put things in actionable terms, and surprise, surprise, you get action. So I realized there was a missing piece here, though. We kind of stumbled onto this. I mean, it took me pulling an all-nighter, manually looking through a bunch of data for a problem we already knew about. There was a missing piece of the puzzle, and it was, how do I get this more automagically? How do I find these things connected? And Tea Leaf was great, but I had no context. I didn't know what the user was trying to do. And frankly, Tea Leaf was millions of sessions. I didn't even know what to look for. Now, separately, we were using a bunch of survey tools and voice of customer tools, but they were just painful because you'd look at the verbatims and people would do these heartfelt statements of what they wanted, but I had no idea what to make of it. I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't reproduce the things they were talking about. I felt bad, but there was nothing we could do about it. And I had my Reese's peanut butter moment. It's like, wow, it turns out it's not that hard to combine these things. And I personally called up I was no longer at Tea Leaf, but the head of technology at Tea Leaf, and we were using a product called Opinion Lab, and I called up the head of technology at Opinion Lab, and I got them both on the phone together, and I said, can you guys work together? And they were really excited. And it turned out it wasn't that hard, and we glued it together, and suddenly every comment I was getting from my voice of customer side was automatically wired in to actual user behavior in my solution that showed me what happened. And interesting things happened. So as an example, down at hotels.com, we had just launched our loyalty program, Welcome Rewards, and I had spent the prior couple months cleaning up a lot of profile and login issues, and I was fairly certain I'd nailed them all. In fact, I knew I'd nailed them all. And this was just like weeks after we launched, someone sends in an actual comment, and this was the actual comment. It seemed innocent enough, but I'm unable to log into my account. It's not recognizing my email. I was mad. I'm like, we'd solved this. What's this all about? And we pulled up the session, and it turned out it was right. The customer was there. It was a travel arranger at a high-end East Coast cosmetics company who managed all the travel for all her sales reps in her business. We were only weeks into the program, and she had already earned, you got like a free night after 10 bookings, and she had already earned 3 free nights, which was just amazing to me by its own, and it was all gone. Her account was gone. It was vaporized. It wasn't there. In fact, over 3 days, I saw her come back to the site 10 times trying to where it was happening. Where's my data? A login failing doesn't matter that much. When there's money on the line, where you've got a balance there, people care. So it turned out, and I won't get into the ugly details, but there's a synchronization issue where these were corporate type travel situations. They were often calling it a call center, and there was a synchronization issue. If anyone at the call center ever touched a record, it actually killed the profile on the website. And it was happening thousands of times, and it wasn't new. But until we actually put a monetary value on the account, no one had ever bothered telling us before. It's been going on for years, and we didn't know. One comment, one piece of feedback, context into the session, we were able to glue these things together. We found it, we were able to size it very quickly, we were able to get to the root cause very quickly, and literally within hours we were working on a fix and restored her account, and she actually became one of our most loyal customers. But it took that intersection, that Reese's peanut butter, chocolate peanut butter thing of how do I get my voice of customer data with my web data. And it was early in my career at hotels, but really set the path of what we were doing. And it came down to a really important lesson, which is give your customers a voice and they'll give you gold. Listen to them. They're talking to you all over the place, the call center, inbound emails, surveys. Listen, look, figure out what it means. It's paid for my team hundreds of times over. So 2009, I was told, it's funny, I kind of promised my wife, hey, we'll go down to Dallas for a while and then we'll move back to San Francisco. And in 2009, I said, okay, let's move to Seattle. It was close. Kind of aimed for that Northwest and just missed. But she agreed, and I was brought up to Expedia with sort of the charter, hey, can you do it again? I thought, okay, I'll give that a whack. It's a big company, it'll be fun. And it's a big company. I mean, in today's term, 90 million unique visitors a month and $16 billion in booking just for the Expedia brand alone, 30 million transactions. We're tracking 110 report suites in Omniture. We've got over 500 terabytes of data, and it'll be up to actually petabytes soon, and data warehouse and tea leaf data and Omniture data that we pull down. It was big, and it was broken. It was fragmented. There were analysts everywhere. There was technology everywhere. There was tools everywhere. And we started looking at all this. I'm like, how am I going to pull this all together? And we spent a lot of money on marketing. I mean, we're one of the largest spenders out there on paid search. I mean, a lot of money. And figuring out how those dollars perform is really, really important at the company, for individuals, for the success of the company, for making sure that we're getting the most out of our working money. And attribution started to be a place that I realized there was a lot to figure out. Who gets the touch? Last touch, first touch, whatever. Touchy, touchy. So I started looking, what do we have? And we wallpapered a wall with all of the different marketing and trading reports that we had. And they all were very similar, but they all had really different data. We had actually well-defined measures of what's a shopper and what's conversion, but different regions, different channels, and over time they changed. I found 50 active valid definitions of conversion that were being compared, but it was not apples to apples. I mean, you think, how can conversion be so complicated? I mean, it's number of people who came to my site, number of transactions. But what's someone who comes to my site? If they just came to the homepage and left, is that a visitor? Or do they actually have to do something? Do they have to, if they just look at our financial statements or looking for a job, do I count them in the equation or not? So all these rules were coming in on what's a shopper and what's a transaction. If they buy a package, which is a flight plus a hotel, which on our back end is actually 2 separate swipes of a credit card. Is that 2 transactions or 1 transaction? It's somewhat subjective, but you've got to have a single definition. It's got to be the same everywhere. And we had lots of really high-performing channels, SEO and SEM and email and partner marketing and affiliates and all these different things. And it turns out it's really easy for them to be really high-performing when you don't dedupe any of their performance across the channels. And have lots of conflicting definitions of the channels. I added up the full performance of all the channels, and it was 3 times our total revenues. And they all said that they were operating efficiently.